Welcome to the Lean Blog Podcast. Visit our website at www.leanblog.org. Now, here's your host, Mark Graban.
Hi, this is Mark Graban from the Lean Blog. This is episode number 15 of the Lean Blog Podcast. It's January 7th, 2007, and our guest today is a repeat visitor to the podcast, Jim Huntzinger, the president of the Lean Accounting Summit, and now also the Training Within Industry Summit. And that's our topic today, the TWI program. Training Within Industry is a program that's coming back, if you will. It's an important lean method that looks at how you develop standard work, how you train employees, and probably most importantly, how you train supervisors to train their employees and how to drive continuous improvement in the workplace. So listen in, and please check out the show notes at www.leanpodcast.org for some links to some background information and additional TWI resources, as well as a link to Jim's upcoming summit. Jim, thanks again for joining us for another podcast. The topic today will be the Training Within an Industry program. Thanks for being here.
No, I'm glad to be back.
There's going to be some links and information out on the Lean Blog website for people that want to read a more in-depth history of the Training Within Industry program. But Jim, I was wondering if you could kind of help catch up our listeners where that program originated and how it's seeming to become more relevant today.
Well, it originated with World War II, and with the outbreak of the war, even prior to the war, actually the United States entering the war, the manufacturing that was going on in the United States was steadily ramping up rapidly, first to help the Allies, then as we came into the war, to ramp up our own munition production in support of the war. So it was a program that was developed for that purpose, and really to focus in on the training aspect of new workers coming in and a supervisor and how they can get those people up to speed rapidly, just due to the influx of manufacturing increase, as well as with all the new people coming into manufacturing, with many of the folks that previously were in manufacturing going overseas to fight the war.
Yeah. And so then, you know, this is an old program that pretty much dissolved after World War II in the United States. And it was taken over to Japan as kind of a key part of the industrial revitalization program over there, right?
Yes, during the occupation, the United States did many things to help rebuild Japan's industrial base, and TWI was one of the things that was brought over there to support that. And the thing that really helped during the occupation and post-occupation Japan is Japanese industry really institutionalized the TWI program through a number of their industrial organizations and training organizations to disperse that out throughout their industry. And it was prevalent over there then, and actually it's still pretty prevalent over there now. And
TWI was pretty well incorporated into the Toyota production system and a lot of their methods, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the keys with it, and really ties into its relevancy today, let alone the fact just it is an excellent industrial training program on its own. But what Toyota did was really leverage not only the technique that TWI teaches, but the philosophy behind the technique, and it really fit in with what they were trying to do on trying to drive change and particularly standardized work and standard methods into context when they did this post-World War II, and particularly what Ohno was trying to do, deploy his Ohno line out of the machine shop and throughout the whole Toyota organization. He really saw this TWI as a vehicle to help drive those changes and get people to adhere to these new methods and new standards that they were working to put in place.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of the basis for TWI with the United States in World War II, it seemed like a lot of the emphasis was on increasing volume, building more, making more. It's kind of interesting to see that, reading some of the details about TWI, that it does talk about the idea of key points and focusing on quality, and being incorporated into Toyota production system. The TPS philosophy, obviously not just about building more, independent of customer demand. Focusing on quality is kind of interesting to see how that, what seemed like maybe on the surface, just a quantity program evolved into something that fit in very well with the lean concept.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like I said, obviously TWI is just a technique, but built within it, and the folks during the war that developed it, and actually even has a history that goes quite a bit prior to World War II. But they wanted to invoke in it, obviously, creating better efficiency, getting out, and one of the mantras of TWI was doing more with less. Now, they didn't verbalize it quite in that manner, but if you look at how we verbalize the Toyota production system, it's about doing more with less, and that's what they were really trying to do with the TWI, is create an environment, again, at the supervisor-worker interface where people could safely, they emphasize safety, they emphasize there's always a better way to do things, so continuous improvement, and the job methods technique of TWI was in a sense the original kaizen process, and then also the job instruction was the training process, which was the original method they developed because training was so critical to get everybody to train and work in the same manner to increase productivity and increase output and decrease scrap and rework, and again make it a very safe work environment, and that's what they were trying to achieve with TWI.
You mentioned job methods and job instruction. Those are a couple of the main components of the TWI program, where job methods was about how to create basically the standard work document. Job instruction was focused on how to train people. And the thing that's interesting to me, doing lean work, is that I think most of the time we focus on the job methods portion of just getting the standard work documented, and then even myself sometimes kind of get shortchanged the importance of actually how to do the training, and something that I've personally taken away from reading about TWI is putting more of a formalized structure around training, but then also training how to train, and getting some good lessons from TWI.
Yeah, in that sense, actually, the job instruction method is actually more of the standard work development, and job methods is more of the kaizen or continuous improvement. And one thing I want to emphasize, a couple things. One is, the Toyota definitely took more things than just TWI to develop their system, but TWI is very elemental and very foundational to it. But the third training that TWI was job relations,
right?
And it's very important because it's really it is a method and philosophy about building that relationship between the workers and their supervisors, which is critical and key to allow job instruction and job methods to be more successful. Then job instruction, again, is really kind of the building of the standard work. And again, it's still taught at Toyota today, the job instruction training. And then they utilize job methods, or in TWI utilize job methods to make the improvements or the step up. Now, the thing that developed at Toyota that's a little bit different is Ohno ended up thinking that job methods was a little bit too point focused, which it is, and he was obviously more interested, as we phrase it today, the value stream and how to improve that. So they kind of evolved, I don't want to say evolved methods, somewhat beyond the job methods, although if you look at the essence of kaizen, it's still the elements of job methods as well. But the job relations, I definitely want to emphasize the importance of that, because if you don't have that situation in hand and a technique to use, which it teaches, then the other ones, job instruction and job methods, just aren't going to be as effective.
Yeah, I liked how the job relations portion of TWI focused on, how to be a supervisor, teaching supervisors how to facilitate what sounded like kaizen, and how to coach employees, not just, managing the time clock and, kind of being an old style traditional supervisor. That it really seemed to have some material on how to be a good supervisor and creating standard work and standard methods for being a supervisor, which from my experience is pretty important.
Yes.
Now, we talk about how Toyota's used TWI over time. I think I read in one of the pieces how there's sort of a rediscovery, that this was sort of a somewhat of a hidden secret within the Toyota world, that somebody discovered an old TWI manual. Am I remembering that story right? Or how did TWI get rediscovered, if you will, within the last couple of years, where yourself and other people are researching and writing about it?
Yeah, I guess the way it kind of came about was, for me anyway, and I know a couple other people that I've been working with over the years, the same thing, is back in, I think it was 1997 or 98, when Jeff Liker published Becoming Lean. Read that book, and in a chapter that John Shook wrote, he briefly mentions TWI. And myself and, like I said, some other folks that I've talked with, found that kind of intriguing of how some World War II program had something to do with the Toyota production system. Well, right at the same time, Miyazaki Yamai published Gemba Kaizen.
Right.
And I happened to read that book immediately after Becoming Lean, and he mentions it in even quite a bit more detail, TWI and its impact on Toyota, briefly, but more than in Becoming Lean. So then it just became, I got to find out what some World War II program has to do with the Toyota production system. And then a couple other people had gone through the same process around the same time, and were able to run across each other, and have just really been trying to work to, reestablish TWI nationally and get it exposed. And this is back in 99, 2000. So here we are, fast forward, 6 years, and it's really gained, particularly in the last 12 months, a lot of speed, a lot of momentum. That lack of ability to maintain standardization and stability has been a real problem for folks trying to do lean and implement lean, and this is one of the key factors that help Toyota do that. And I think people are really gravitating to see that this is the same type of thing for any other organization. It's a very big support function of the ability to standardize the work as they develop new methods, and then sustain the gains that they make.
And it also provides a different historical context. If there's still people today that get wound up that, lean is a Japanese method, and somehow, use that as an excuse to where it doesn't apply here. I guess this is yet another case, beyond, examples of Toyota learning from Henry Ford and, kind of Americans teaching, Japanese industry, and now it's sort of coming full circle back to the United States. That you can point to people that TWI was a U.S. industrial U.S. government program, that it was at least pretty much of American origin, right?
Yeah, and that seems to happen time and time again, with a number of aspects of the things with the Toyota production system. But definitely one of the two unique things that Toyota was able to do, they were able to take many of these different attributes and blend them into their particular business needs, and develop a unique business model out of it. And that's definitely where they've been very unique, to be a company that's been able to do that, over quite a few decades. It's taken them to develop that.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit, it seemed like a lot of the TWI methodology was designed for training, brand new, inexperienced employees. You mentioned World War II, factory workers are being sent overseas, and the factories are bringing in a lot of people who were new to that company or who had never worked in manufacturing. Do you think that the same methodology applies when you have a situation where you have long-time employees, say 20 years, who have never really had standard work? They all have their own method and their pride in how they do things. A different situation than someone just coming in brand new from off on the streets. Do you see a difference in either how the program, how TWI would have to be applied, or how to play to the motivation of somebody who's already been doing a job for a long time?
No, not really too much. That's where, particularly if you're applying the job relations aspect, you can work some through some of those. But a couple things. It's as applicable with people that have been there for years and years. And a situation I struggled with for years before I ran across this was, how do you get these people who are all different and different shifts, work different ways, to achieve the, working in a standard work format? Well, one thing I discovered with TWI, or particularly job instruction, is if you just use that method, by default, it gets everybody working in the same manner. And also, to illustrate that, is Toyota still uses job instruction today to train their workers on how to do a job. So, now that at their plants, well, in Japan, they've been there for decades, and here in the United States, they've been here for 20 plus years, and they're still using job instruction to train their people with many years of experience and many years of experience in a Toyota environment to continually improve and then to standardize into a particular method to do the work. Mm-hmm. So it is very applicable today, and with workforces that have lots of experience and have been around for a while.
Yeah. One of the things that jumped out at me, I think it was right in the first step of how to do the training in this methodology. It says something to the effect of, get the employee motivated to learn.
Yes.
And I imagine different employees are going to have different motivations. So part of, I would imagine, your responsibility as a leader or a supervisor is to understand what that motivation might be for different people.
Yeah, and that's one thing that's unique and very good about the TWI methods is they took a lot of philosophical aspects and then manifested them into actual procedures and methods to do. That as you mentioned being one of them. So they understood a lot of that, and then, like I said, instead of just discussing the philosophy, they embedded that within the method itself, so they can achieve the philosophical objective via some actual procedures that they teach people to go through when using these methods. Mm-hmm. And that's probably one of the golden things about TWI, that they did that so well. But they also did it by actually going into the plants and trying out methods they came up with, reevaluating time and time again, which is one reason they had the name Training Within Industries, because it was developed by industry within industry, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why it became such a robust methodology.
And what are your thoughts, or what's the historical consensus on why American industry moved away from this methodology after World War II?
I think two main things. I think mainly at the end of World War II, and for quite a few years afterwards, the United States simply had no competition.
Yeah.
So there was no urgency, no incentive to maintain that edge, because we were able to maintain that edge for quite a few years. And then also, too, in a sense, when the boys came back from overseas, they had not been trained in the methodology, so they were, absorbed back into the workforce. And without the urgency, without the, bulk coming back, having been trained in it, it's just kind of a natural tendency for it to dissolve. And even the 5 gentlemen that actually developed and led the TWI program during the war, they really understood this all along and understood it was a high possibility that it definitely will diminish when that urgency and need is no longer there. And it was a very strong concern of theirs too.
Yeah. So it was kind of a real early sustainment challenge of not holding to those methods, unfortunately.
Yes, and they one of their keys during the war when they were doing this was the management had to be on board and be supportive of it, and they struggled with that from the get-go, and continued to struggle with that from different aspects during the 5 years of the program itself.
Yeah.
But it did make a very significant impact on our industrial base, and is considered one of the keys to help in our manufacturing, help to contribute to win the war.
So if listeners want to learn more about the TWI program, what are some different resources or things that you would recommend for people to read more?
Well, there's a couple books that Productivity Press has released in the last year, and I unfortunately can't recall the name off the top of my head of the two, but one's by Don De Niro, which gets into a lot of detail about the history behind TWI, a real good study on that. And then the other one is a book by Patrick Graup and Bob Rona, which talks about the methods as a practical today methodology, and walks through those in a lot of detail. And there's also an MEP out of Central New York, the TDO, that has also worked on and revived the training manuals, and is working on doing training in TWI today, as well as with helping emphasize, try to get this back out industry-wide as a methodology that we're using in the United States and even abroad for that matter.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'll make sure links to those books and those websites are out there on the Lean blog, on the main page for this podcast if anyone wants to go back and find links to those. I'll make sure that the titles and everything are out there, as well as a couple of links to some things I know Jim has written. There was a real good article that was available on Art Smalley's website, artoflean.com, of the roots of lean, training within industry program. I don't know if that article's available other places online, Jim.
Yeah, there's Lean Enterprise Institute has the original article, or the original paper that article was based from, and then I originally did that article for AME's Association of Manufacturing Excellence Target Magazine, and just recently did an article for Target Magazine. So AME's been very supportive of this. Also, SME's Lean Directions has had an article on this as well too. So, organizations like AME and SME are definitely very engaged in this and understand the power and behind something like TWI.
And then finally, you'd mentioned in our last podcast that you're going to do a summit or some sort of meeting next year on the TWI process.
Yeah, we're organizing, in the process of organizing a TWI summit that tentatively it looks like it'll be May 2007. We're trying to verify the dates for the venue. We're going to have it down in Orlando. We're trying to verify the dates. But if you go to twisummit.com, then you can see information there on the summit that will be coming up this next year.
Okay, well, great. And be sure to keep me posted about that. I'll make sure that we provide links to that and kind of help promote that on the blog over time.
Okay.
Well, Jim, thanks again for helping us learn a little more about the Training Within Industry program, and certainly encourage everyone to go out and take a look at this methodology. I think it's something that is very useful to incorporate into your lean work.
Yeah, well, it's my pleasure, and I hope people find it interesting and helpful.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. This has been the Lean Blog Podcast. For Lean news and commentary updated daily, visit www.leanblog.org. If you have any questions or comments about this podcast, email Mark at leanpodcast@gmail.com.